Ma'am, what are you doing here? Can you provide ID and explain those bags?
I just purchased these items.
Receipts are visible. What's the legal reason for this stop? Are you refusing a lawful order to comply?
I'm cooperating, but you need reasonable suspicion.
Have you ever wondered how a single flawed assumption can unravel an entire institution? We navigate our daily routines trusting that the systems designed to protect us operate on logic, evidence, and fairness. Yet occasionally those systems are compromised by individuals who allow their personal biases to dictate their actions. In many instances, these encounters fade into the background, leaving quiet, lasting scars on those who were unfairly judged. But every so often, a baseless prejudice collides with the absolute wrong target. It meets someone equipped not only with an unshakable will, but with the exact training, authority, and tactical precision required to force a broken system to look at its own reflection. This is a journey about what happens when unquestioned authority meets uncompromising accountability. Before we dive into the details, I have a quick question for you. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city and state down in the comments. I absolutely love seeing the diverse corners of the country our community represents. And if stories about demanding truth and sparking real change resonate with you, please hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a moment of what we do here. Late summer in Texas carries a specific kind of heavy, unforgiving heat, the kind that blurs the horizon above vast asphalt parking lots. On a Tuesday afternoon in September, Naomi Rivers was navigating that exact heat outside a sprawling suburban department store. At 41, she was a woman whose life was defined by absolute precision and calculated awareness. As a special agent with the United States Secret Service assigned to protect the vice president, her entire existence revolved around assessing threats, securing perimeters, and anticipating the unpredictable. Before earning her federal badge, she had dedicated over a decade to the United States Army, surviving 2 grueling combat tours overseas and earning a Purple Heart after a roadside ambush nearly claimed her life. She was highly educated, impeccably trained, and possessed security clearances that allowed her into the most restricted rooms in the nation. But on this particular afternoon, her mind was miles away from protective details and government protocols. Her thoughts were entirely consumed by her 16-year-old son, Elijah, and a deeply personal mission of love. Just 6 months prior, the Rivers family's world had been shattered. Naomi's husband of nearly 2 decades, Marcus, had been tragically killed in a hit-and-run collision. Marcus was the anchor of their household, the kind of father who practically lived for milestones, sporting events, and driving lessons. For months before his passing, he and Elijah had been eagerly planning for the boys' upcoming junior prom. They had spent countless evenings analyzing suit cuts, debating fabric choices, and discussing the finer points of looking sharp, ultimately settling on a classic deep navy ensemble that mirrored the one Marcus had worn in his youth. The sudden loss of his father left Elijah utterly devastated, and as the dance approached, the teenager confessed that the grief was simply too heavy. He couldn't bring himself to attend. But Naomi, while sorting through her late husband's belongings, discovered a folder filled with his handwritten notes. Inside was a meticulously detailed list of stores, complete with a circled recommendation for a specific navy suit at a local retailer. In that quiet, heartbreaking moment, she made a quiet vow. She was going to finish the job Marcus had started. Stepping through the sliding glass doors into the blinding afternoon sun, Naomi felt the comforting weight of the shopping bags pulling at her arms. The largest bag held the carefully wrapped navy suit, the precise shade her husband had chosen. She had spent a meticulous hour inside the store, speaking with the tailor, verifying the measurements and ensuring everything would be absolutely perfect for her son. The prom was only days away, and she finally felt a small flicker of relief. As she navigated the maze of parked vehicles, her military instincts subtly directed her path. She naturally scanned the lanes, noting the sight lines and keeping her head on a swivel, a deeply ingrained habit that never truly turned off. She had parked her sedan under a bright security light, favoring visibility over proximity to the doors. Without a single sound, a patrol cruiser abruptly sliced across the traffic lane, aggressively angling its chassis to block her direct path to her car. The heavy engine idled as the driver scrutinized her through the windshield. The door swung open and a veteran deputy stepped onto the pavement. He was a man approaching 50, his posture broadcasting an immediate tense hostility. His hand came to rest casually but deliberately near the service weapon holstered at his hip. In that fraction of a second, the complex, highly decorated reality of Naomi's life ceased to matter to the man approaching her. To him, she was not a grieving widow. She was not a decorated combat veteran. She was simply a target of his own preconceived notions, a woman whose mere presence in that environment had triggered his deeply flawed judgment. The internal calculus that had kept Naomi alive in active war zones instantly activated. Keep the hands visible. Measure every physical movement. Regulate the pitch and volume of your voice. The deputy closed the distance, his jaw tightly clenched, his stance wide and confrontational. Naomi stopped perfectly still, the shopping bags hanging securely from her forearms. The store logos were clearly visible, as were the crisp white receipts protruding from the handles. "Step away from the vehicle," the deputy barked, the command sharp and breathless. He remained 15 feet away, his hand still hovering near his belt. The order lacked any legal or tactical logic. Naomi maintained an entirely neutral expression, keeping her tone flat and completely devoid of aggression. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked. His eyes narrowed, ignoring the obvious proof of purchase hanging from her wrists. "Suspicious activity," he snapped. "We received a call regarding a theft. You fit the description perfectly. I need to see your identification, and I need to search those bags right now." Naomi instantly knew the claim was a fabrication. With the same clinical certainty she used to evaluate crowd risks and ballistic trajectories, she recognized the subtle tells of a manufactured narrative. There was no dispatch call. There was no description. This was a baseless assumption cloaked in a uniform. She understood the legal framework of a lawful stop intimately. Without reasonable, articulable suspicion, this detention was entirely unconstitutional. Yet she also understood the reality of the situation. Questioning authority in an empty parking lot was a dangerous game. She drew a slow, deliberate breath, anchoring herself. "I need you to articulate the specific reason for this stop," she replied calmly. "Every item in these bags has a visible receipt attached to it." The deputy took another aggressive step forward, effectively shrinking the physical space between them to an uncomfortable degree. "I am not here to answer your questions," he retorted, his voice rising in volume. "Drop the bags immediately and produce your ID." Around them, the everyday rhythm of the commercial center began to stutter. Shoppers loading their trunks paused. A woman a few cars down slowly raised her smartphone, the camera lens pointing squarely at the unfolding scene. A man pushing a cart stopped in the crosswalk, his eyes locked on the confrontation. Above them, mounted to the very light pole Naomi had deliberately chosen for parking, a closed-circuit camera silently recorded every frame. Slowly, methodically, Naomi lowered the bags to the sweltering pavement. She gently placed the garment bag containing the prom suit slightly behind her, an instinctual move to shield her son's legacy from the hostility in front of her. "I am reaching into my purse to retrieve my wallet," Naomi narrated, her voice steady and clear enough to be heard by the surrounding witnesses. It was a survival tactic passed down through generations, a way to eliminate any excuse for perceived sudden movements. As she withdrew her hand, the deputy demanded she open the merchandise bags as well. He was relying entirely on intimidation, operating under the assumption that a civilian would simply capitulate to the pressure. But Naomi was not an ordinary civilian. She mentally flashed back to the dusty, chaotic roads of the Middle East, to the intense, split-second decisions that had earned her a Purple Heart. She thought of her spotless personnel file, the trust placed in her by the highest executive office in the country. and she felt the exhausting, familiar weight of needing to be absolutely flawless just to walk away from a routine errand unharmed. "Are you going to produce that ID, or do I need to escalate this?" the deputy threatened, the hostility radiating off him. Instead of a state driver's license, Naomi's hand emerged, holding a sleek black leather case. She kept it closed for a moment. Just then, the distant rumble of arriving engines broke the tension. 2 additional patrol vehicles rapidly pulled into the lane, boxing in the area. 2 younger deputies quickly exited, their eyes darting around to assess the threat level. What they saw deeply confused them. A perfectly calm woman standing beside clearly marked shopping bags, while their senior colleague stood in an aggressive, escalating posture. The first arriving deputy cautiously approached. "What's the situation here?" he asked. The senior officer didn't break eye contact with Naomi. "Suspect matches a theft description." The second arriving deputy was already staring at the mobile terminal in his hand. He frowned, deeply perplexed. "What call? There's nothing on the dispatch board." The fabricated foundation of the stop disintegrated instantly in the heavy summer air. Naomi remained completely silent, allowing the contradiction to echo between the officers. Her stillness was her strongest tactical advantage. The younger deputies looked at the bags, easily spotting the time-stamped receipts. "She has her proof of purchase right there," one murmured. The senior officer flushed a deep, furious red. "I know what I saw," he insisted, though it was clear to everyone present that he had only seen his own prejudice. Recognizing the severe legal liability unfolding, the younger deputy stepped in front of his superior, creating a physical barrier. "Ma'am, you are free to leave. We apologize for the inconvenience." Inconvenience was a severely inadequate term for a constitutional violation, but Naomi recognized the immediate objective was a safe exit. She calmly opened her phone and took clear, deliberate photographs of all 3 officers' nameplates and badge numbers. "We'll be keeping an eye out," the senior officer muttered bitterly as she turned away. She offered no reaction. She carefully placed the bags into her vehicle, locked the doors, and drove away exactly at the speed limit, her eyes constantly checking the rear-view mirror. When she arrived home, she found Elijah immersed in his homework, his headphones blocking out the world. She stood in his doorway for a long moment before holding out the protective garment bag. "Your father wanted to make sure you had this," she said softly. Elijah took the bag, unzipping it just enough to see the rich navy fabric. A complex wave of grief and deep gratitude washed over his face. He didn't ask where she had been, and she didn't burden him with the reality of the afternoon. Some moments are sacred, and she refused to let the ugliness of the parking lot tarnish his father's gift. That night, long after the house grew quiet, Naomi sat at her dining table and transformed into the federal investigator she was trained to be. She laid out the receipts, her timeline, the badge numbers, and the specific phrases used during the encounter. She documented the position of the surveillance cameras and the exact locations of the civilian witnesses holding phones. Her military career had taught her that victories are secured through meticulous preparation. Her federal service had reinforced that true protection requires undeniable evidence. She prepared a dossier so comprehensive that it would be entirely impossible for any department to sweep it under the rug. By sunrise, the machinery of accountability was shifting into gear. Naomi contacted her special agent in charge, delivering a dry, factual briefing of the constitutional violations she had endured. The response from the federal level was instantaneous and absolute. The agency protected its own, and an unjustified, biased detention of a cleared federal agent was not going to be ignored. Meanwhile, at the local precinct, the senior deputy filed his incident report. It was a masterclass in omission, vaguely referencing a suspicious person who was ultimately cleared, conveniently leaving out the lack of a dispatch call, the civilian recordings, and the intervention of his peers. However, the truth has a way of finding the light. The 2 younger deputies filed their own required statements shortly after. accurately detailing the absence of a call, the visible receipts, and the lack of any legal justification for the stop. The glaring contradictions instantly triggered internal flags. Simultaneously, the digital world was waking up. One of the witnesses who had filmed the encounter uploaded the footage to a major platform. The video was undeniable, 30 seconds of a calm, cooperative woman being aggressively cornered over shopping bags. By lunchtime, the clip had amassed hundreds of thousands of views. By dinner, a local advocacy group had secured the overhead security footage, providing a high-definition, unedited view of the entire ordeal. The contrast between the deputy's hostility and Naomi's disciplined grace struck a massive nerve across the nation. Instead of retreating, Naomi chose to step directly into the spotlight. Less than 48 hours after the incident, a press conference was organized on the steps of the county courthouse. She arrived not in civilian clothes, but in her immaculate, formal Secret Service uniform. It was a highly calculated decision approved by her superiors. She wanted the public and the department to see exactly who they had targeted. Elijah stood proudly beside her, wearing the tailored navy suit. When she approached the microphones, she didn't read from a script. She calmly recited her service record, her deployments, and her current responsibilities protecting the nation's leadership. She laid out the factual timeline of the unlawful stop, dissecting the failure of procedure with clinical precision, and then she humanized the data. She spoke of her late husband, the deep sorrow of her family, and the profound indignity of attempting to honor a father's memory only to be treated as an inherent threat due to a flawed, prejudiced judgment. When the assembled press realized the woman in the viral video was a decorated agent entrusted with the lives of the executive branch, the story erupted into a national firestorm. The resulting investigations were swift and unsparing. State bureaus and federal civil rights divisions descended upon the local department. What they unearthed was deeply disturbing. The officer's personnel file revealed a decades-long pattern of similar complaints. Dozens of citizens who had reported baseless detentions, aggressive behavior, and unwarranted searches. For years, the institution had looked the other way, filing the grievances into dark cabinets. But the most devastating revelation was yet to come. As investigators combed through the officer's past cases, they discovered that he had been the lead investigator assigned to the hit-and-run that claimed Marcus Rivers' life 6 months earlier. The case file was shockingly thin. Critical evidence had been ignored, security footage from nearby intersections had never been requested, and witness statements indicating the vehicle might have intentionally swerved had been completely buried. The case had been hastily closed as a tragic accident, leaving a grieving family with zero closure. The cruelty of the coincidence was staggering. The same man who had callously dismissed the investigation into her husband's death had later targeted her in a parking lot over the suit bought to honor him. The federal civil rights lawsuit that followed was unprecedented. Naomi was joined by over 24 of the officer's previous victims, transforming a single incident into a monumental class action demand for systemic reform. The legal pressure was insurmountable. In federal court, the trial dismantled the officer's defense piece by piece. The security footage was played. The younger deputies testified truthfully about the lack of cause. And one by one, previous victims took the stand, painting an undeniable picture of chronic, unchecked prejudice. When Naomi testified, she remained composed and resolute, easily dismantling the defense attorney's attempts to frame her as uncooperative. She clearly articulated that an honest mistake does not require fabricating dispatch calls, nor does it require falsifying official reports. The jury deliberated for a mere 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts across the board. The judge's sentencing was severe, resulting in federal prison time, the stripping of all credentials, and total financial ruin for the disgraced officer. The civil resolution brought an enormous settlement, but more importantly, it forced absolute, legally binding restructuring of the department. Independent oversight boards were established, Stringent evidence-based training was mandated, and strict body camera compliance was enforced by judicial order. The culture was forced to change, not simply through goodwill, but through the heavy hand of undeniable accountability. Naomi utilized her portion of the settlement to secure Elijah's educational future, fulfilling the exact dreams Marcus had held for their son. She also established a foundation dedicated to providing elite legal resources to those who suffer from biased policing but lack the platform to fight back. Through it all, she continued her demanding career, proving that true strength lies not in explosive anger, but in the methodical, relentless pursuit of what is right. When prom night finally arrived, the cameras and the noise had faded, leaving only the quiet reality of a family moving forward. Elijah looked immaculate in the navy suit. Naomi drove him to the venue smiling through tears as she watched him walk confidently into the lights. Later, she shared a single, simple photo of him online. The caption read, "For the fathers who watch from above and for the future that demands we stand our ground." It became an emblem of incredible resilience, proving that when confronted with the darkest parts of a flawed system, an unyielding dedication to truth can bring about a brighter, fairer morning. What an incredible testament to the power of holding the line. Have you ever had a moment where you had to stand up for yourself against unfair assumptions? I would love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below.